We're so glad you're here.
We believe in bringing in experts to inspire and to educate women so that they can live empowered, fulfilled, and successful lives.
When women support women, we change the world. Here we go.
You're going to love this program. Welcome. Our guest today is a talented and respected leader and a self-described builder and connector. She shares that networking for her is as natural as breathing. And Nancy and I love that. Nancy, one of the things I really admire about her is she's at the same time dynamic and totally zen. Our guest is Kate Bensen. After retiring from her career as a corporate attorney, Kate became the CEO of the Chicago network. And under her leadership, she elevated the importance of achieving greater gender and racial equity across all levels of management and in the boardrooms. And she also built an initiative to help create our next generation of leaders. Welcome, Kate. It's so great to have you with us today.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Our pleasure. Nancy and I are really looking forward to this conversation. I know now you've really turned your attention to your board work, and I know you've already had significant experience chairing boards in various committees and really contributing in so many meaningful ways, and that you're especially passionate about governance. And actually, Kate, that's a shared passion for us and our organization.
That's
Um,
terrific.
Absolutely. It makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
So let's talk a little bit about your experiences that have really shaped you and your journey in designing this living your brilliant life.
So I recognized pretty early in life, actually when I was in the sixth grade, that you have to recognize when doors are opening for you.
Mm.
We moved from a very working class neighborhood in Chicago to Westchester County, New York. And I had never met a business person, a wealthy person, a Jewish person in my life. And I felt like someone was just shaking me hard and I was waking up and seeing the world for the first time. So I
Wow.
realized that this was a phenomenal place to be. Doors also opened, and I recognized that. That got me to the University of Chicago. That got me working for a spectacular couple that became almost my second parents. And just throughout my life, you just have to be open and receptive and recognize when that door is opening and walk right through it.
Yeah,
It's
I love
interesting.
it.
I noticed that you've taken quite a few leaps of faith or leaps throughout your career. Can you share with us a little bit about, where you have found your courage, but both in the past and today? How do you find your courage?
Well, I was a partner at a very lovely law firm for many years, and it was intellectually satisfying, but it wasn't really bringing a lot of joy.
Mhm.
And so, the first really big risk I guess I took was to step off and retire from the law and give up my clients and really take a little bit of time out to really sort through what I wanted to do next. I knew and wrote to all my partners that I was heading in a not for profit direction, but frankly, I didn't even know what that meant. One of the wonderful things that happened was I was slated to become president of the Chicago Finance Exchange the next year. So I had something really interesting to walk into, and we were able to do, strategic planning and wonderful things that, provided very strong foundation for the organization. And the next leap was really the University of Chicago approached me to lead their women's board, which is not a party throwing group. It raises serious money for the university's intellectual and social and community priorities. And that was an opportunity for me to see whether I could lead volunteers. So when you're a deal partner at a law firm, everybody basically has to do what you say. But if you're leading a group of volunteers, no one has to do what you say. So could I get everybody on board? And that role, which lasted 3 years, turned out to be one of the most influential in development of my leadership skills and skills around fundraising, grant making, communication, strategy, just about everything. It was an organization with which there was nothing wrong, but it could be so much more. So that gave me a chance to really learn that I'm a builder as well as a connector. And then after my term was up, I went to go look for a job, and I ran into a brick wall. I thought I would love to go work very high up at a cultural institution like a museum, since that's a passion for me. And I met with some wonderful and gracious, university presidents, but I realized that the people who had those jobs were going to never give them up until they were buried. So that was not a possibility, but I was given an opportunity to take another leap and pivot in a different direction and lead the strategy practice for a small lobbying firm which served the nonprofit sector. And that was great because it allowed me to get a kind of a bird's eye view into several different nonprofits and different types of organizations and learn what I wanted as well as what I didn't
Mm.
want. And I realized what I didn't want was an organization that was reliant on government funding. And so that was another important clarifying role. And plus, I got a chance to really, continue to hone my strategy skills. And then the Chicago network came calling, and all of a sudden, things that I had pursued because they were interesting or I would learn something looked a lot more organized in the rearview mirror than they did at the time moving forward. But my principle has always been there has to be joy in what you do.
Mm.
And each role I took brought a particular kind of joy.
That's so true. Nancy and I talk a lot about the importance of getting connected to your purpose in the work that you do. Yeah, we find that some women feel like, well, I'll do that later, when
Yeah.
I have more time. And you adapted that attitude so early on.
Well, none of us knows how much time we have on the earth.
Hmm.
And, it's people who work and work and work and work, and then they're going to travel and then they have a heart attack and die. And so none of that ever happens. So I
Yeah.
think it's really seize the day.
Yeah. Carpe diem. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I,
and I was just going to say, I mean, Barbara and I also talk a lot about, the fact that this is where we spend, 75% of our time, and a third of our life is, working, if not more. And if you can't find joy in that what you're doing, um, good opportunity to step back and kind of reflect on that.
Yeah. And I've been very fortunate to be able to do that.
yeah, well, you had courage to do it.
Right.
A lot of people talk about it, but you did it. And I know what really we're so interested in talking a little more about, because it's so aligned with our women's forum and our mission of our forum to help women live more empowered lives and fulfilled lives, personally, professionally, and financially. You're being celebrated by Chicago Innovation as one of our innovative leaders here in Chicago, specifically for actively empowering women really around you to being a champion of diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Now, that's awesome. And kudos to you for that. So
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be among the initial cohort for this recognition.
Yeah, it's really fabulous. But you deserve to be, because
Hmm.
you were an early pioneer in this whole concept of creating a women's community. Now there's a lot of them. Your commitment to moving to the Chicago network and building out that dynamic program was really before it was vogue or something that a lot of people did. Now, Nancy and I were inspired because when we were earlier in our career, it was a very male dominated industry in the financial services industry. Elbows out, there weren't a lot of seats at the table for women, and we needed more seats at the table. And I feel like you recognized that really early on. And where did that and maybe you can tell us if that was the case, or where that passion or commitment and vision came from?
Well, that really came from, when I joined the network, I spent the first year really going on a listening tour and talking to our members, particularly women of color. And they said, up until now, the network has been very inward facing, and you have all these terrific members. So it's really time to get out there and empower women to lead. And that led to several initiatives, one for college women at less resourced universities. And I remember going to visit Mary Dillon to talk to her about what we were doing. And she just looked at me and she said, "You better make this for U of I women, not U of C women." And I really took that heart and took it back to the board. We also
Mm.
started a leadership conference. We started a virtual mentoring program so that women, wherever they are, can get advice from a Chicago network member, and several other initiatives. But it really transformed the network. It gave us relevance and meaning, and our members were all too happy to dig in.
I love that. And I loved you gave us a metaphor when we were having a conversation that you're a serial mentor and you look at that as charms on a charm bracelet.
Yeah, I mean, once I have a mentorship relationship with someone, they never really go far away. Now, some of them I might hear from at the holidays, but some of them are still in regular contact. And I was just really honored. One of my first mentees, and that was through the Executives Club. Just took me to lunch to really celebrate her success and just really reflect on our relationship and just to see where she is now. She's blossomed and grown. She's up for a big promotion, and it's just so wonderful. So I'd say take as many mentees over the years as you can handle and keep them close.
I mean, I just think about, the word fulfillment. And certainly it sounds like all of those relationships have really brought you such joy and fulfillment. And you think about, the impact that you've had on their lives. I certainly know some of the mentors that I've had in the past who've changed the trajectory of my life that I will never forget. So, but I also, on the flip side, think about, that you must have also faced some challenges in living, this brilliant and just remarkable career. Can you share with us some of the challenges that you faced and how you overcame them?
Sure. It takes a while to become a good mentor.
Hmm.
I can take a look at mentoring relationships of, 10, 15 years ago, and I wasn't that good a listener, you know? And so it's really slowing down and listening. I also learned to develop a sense of curiosity about other people. I really think that you have to meet others, whether they're your colleagues, your bosses, your mentees, your mentors. You have to meet people where they are.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
There was, a fellow at my law firm who probably wasn't bringing his best self to the office and was pretty rough on me. And his father passed away, and I went to his funeral, and that act of showing humanity forever changed our relationship for the better. And so, and especially, when running the network, I would talk to my staff and say, okay, someone may not have brought her best self today, but try to understand what's going on in her life so that you can be supportive of her. And
Right.
it's just, it's kindness, empathy, and curiosity. Um, there was a period at the network. I had a, a, I get a new board chair every year, and this board chair was an entrepreneur, and I'd never had an entrepreneur before. And she's great; she's a dear friend. But at that point, I got a coach, and I really needed a coach, and that was a transformative experience for me. And so I would say to women everywhere, wherever you are in your career, it's really good to have a coach. And,
Hmm.
if your company doesn't have the resources, consider putting together a personal board of directors who will help you, give you advice, and let you know when you're on track and when you're not on track.
Yeah, those are great points. I think we've talked a lot in the Women's Forum about personal board of directors that can be priceless, and doing that with trusted resources shouldn't really cost anything. So, but they
Right.
can be just priceless. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually have a recording from a program. We did it specifically on the importance of and how to create your own personal board of directors.
Oh,
So,
that's great.
yeah,
Mhm.
we totally believe in that, as well as how to get on a paid board. So, we're all about helping to elevate women more to be in that leadership mode, right?
And
Um,
isn't that what's so great about women? I mean, most women are very into helping each other.
Mhm.
Absolutely, I
Mhm.
know. So you talked just what you said speaks a lot about what you believe as a leader and the kind of culture that you like to create in an organization. Any other aspects of the culture you like to cultivate and things that you think other leaders should do or that they're doing right?
Sure, and there are a lot of leaders doing things spectacularly. So these ideas are not new to me. I've gleaned them through the power of observation. But I think it's really good to encourage your staff to be creative, to take risks, and when mistakes are made, just sit down and say, well, what did we learn from this,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
penalize. I think it's really important to build a culture of trust and celebrate everybody's successes, give credit where credit's due. My leadership style tends to be to delegate a lot, but with very high expectations. And I think that really encourages people to, lean into discomfort and grow both as performers and leaders.
It's interesting because you had mentioned a word celebrate, and I think that that's one of the things that women don't do enough of, whether it's a small win or a big win. Is that something that you're intentional with in terms of, the women that you work with and the teams that you work with?
Yeah, no, it is very intentional. But it's sort of, how do you approach life? So
Yeah.
I'm one of these people who approaches life with a profound sense of gratitude, and that includes gratitude to the people that I've had the privilege to work with over the years.
That's fabulous.
Well, that
Yeah.
is so important though, because all we do, sometimes we get caught up in that next victory and that next hurdle versus celebrating and being where we are, right?
And it
Mhm.
doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't mean you're bringing cupcakes to the office all the time. But I think it's also part of what I'm glad to see is a trend of more continuous feedback. So that
Yeah.
people, you're not waiting for your annual review with this incredible sense of, well, what's going to happen here?
Right.
You should be giving feedback, on a regular basis.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
agreed
would
on
agree
that.
with that.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm curious, Kate. What advice would you give women to really step into their power and to own their bold and courageous selves, to experience, more joy and more of the fulfillment, perhaps that you've seen throughout your career?
Um, you know, Everybody has crises of confidence, and I've certainly had them. But one of the things that I found that is most helpful is ask a really good friend to describe you and what you bring to the table, and just take that in. And that I find gives you the confidence to be courageous. It doesn't mean you're rash or reckless, because you have to do everything with a plan, but hearing that affirmation and how people see you, perhaps in ways you don't even see yourself,
Right.
can be incredibly confidence and courage boosting.
Gosh, I so love that you said that. I think there's been times in my life where I felt I was coming across a certain way, and when I asked for that feedback, there was a gap in how I was behaving and how people were perceiving, and I realized there was a disconnect for me in terms of not living in a way aligned with my values, and I needed to elevate and move closer to my beliefs versus how I felt I needed to show up.
I think that's a really important point. Um, but also, have your friends categorize your assets, not your physical assets, but the emotional aspects and the characteristics that define you that you bring to the table. And that often helps with clarity, as well as the useful feedback that we've all gotten when people are kind enough to be straightforward.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, I would totally agree with you. And I think that all of these aspects of your being a serial mentor and a connector and a builder have been things that have brought joy to your life. Are there other aspects outside of your professional life that brings you joy? Like, how do you decompress? How do you practice self care? What types
S-
of joy do you find fulfilling there?
I would say family and friends first and foremost. Music, art. I'm a lifelong learner,
Hmm.
and I love to be outdoors. So I love to golf. I'm a terrible golfer. All my friends will tell you that. Um, but those are the things that really allow me joy and a chance to really recharge.
That's
That's
great.
great. Well, you're in a great city for that. Chicago is awesome for all of those
Yes,
things,
it is.
right?
I
Yeah.
love Chicago.
And then Michigan to get away to there, right?
Yes, which is where I
Yeah.
am now.
Oh, great. Um, Kate, you've made some such intentional choices throughout your life. How has that shown up in your financial life? That's something that Nancy and I are
Mhm.
really passionate about with women and making sure that we have conversations with women about money and what they're doing, what's working for them, and where their challenges are.
Yeah. So I am lucky in the sense that I really started saving for retirement early and maxed out as soon as I could. So I think having a solid financial plan and having an advisor who is your partner in forming and executing this plan are absolutely critical. You are never too young to start saving for retirement or to have an advisor to help you meet your goals. Now I'm pursuing a portfolio life. So that will include board service, both nonprofit and hopefully paying, as well as maintaining those all important relationships with family and friends and travel and some direct service giving back. So there is a town in Michigan called Benton Harbor that has a flint problem in terms of its water quality, and so
Mm.
I will on occasion go and distribute water, and it's really good to be or pack boxes of food for people who are food insecure. And I think that that direct service is incredibly fulfilling and also humbling and makes you realize how lucky you are. Um, you know, life is trade-offs. And I think,
Mhm.
whether you're at any level in a company, whether you're the CEO or a new hire, life is decision making. That's what you're paid to do. You're paid to make decisions. And so once you recognize that and you get comfortable with the fact that that's what you're going to do every day for the rest of your life, you're going to make decisions. Um, you will make better ones, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's what I love about women that are intentional with their finances, or people and women and men, but is when you put a plan together, especially as you're transitioning to your professional world, you can stress test, what it is that you want to do and what's your financial profile. And then through the planning process, are you on track to be able to live that life you want to live now and move into that next chapter? And what are some potential trade-offs and decisions you need to make so that you can fund your life going forward?
Yeah, and we all have those trade-offs. So I just got an apartment in the city, and instead of going on a big trip this year, I moved into that apartment, but I can't do both. But it's a trade-off I was happy to make.
Well,
Well,
you've got a new place, you must feel like you're on vacation all the time.
I
and
do, I do.
and a
I'm
new
pretty
big
lucky.
TV.
And a new
But
big TV, ridiculous TV.
and it's interesting. I remember from our pre-call that one of the things that, and it seems to be carrying into your life today, that you had mentioned is that you always lived within your means.
That's
And I
right.
agree with you that life is all about choices, whether it's the trip or an apartment or whatever. And so you seem to have kind of segued that into this chapter of your life as well.
Well, it's interesting what I saw, particularly in the practice of law, was that people medicate, right, when they're
Hmm.
unhappy. I was medicating through retail and I realized that had to stop. But people were medicating through purchasing ridiculously expensive cars, big homes, home renovations. You just can't do it all.
Right.
And
It's
so,
so
make the decisions that are going to bring you joy and, ensure long term financial prosperity.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. Well, Kate, we can't thank you enough for, well, first and foremost, for your leadership in our community, what you've done and continue to do for women to elevate us, to help us be better leaders, and for your commitment to service. It's such an important part of what it takes to be a good member of a community, as well as just really, I agree, we both agree, being so fulfilling personally. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I've enjoyed the opportunity to spend time with both of you.